Chapter 3. Outer Core. His ears are ringing. Feels a bit like a bomb's gone off too close, and everything's rattling at the edges. Vision wobbling from aftershocks and ears deafened by shrieking static. Okay? Ronbu. Hey, Boo? His mouth is dry. Has it always been that dry? He tries swallowing and regrets. Chokes on what feels like a mound of sand. Gets stuck somewhere down his windpipe and he can't breathe. He can't breathe. He can't... To be okay. Just breathe, all right? I love you. His head hurts. His feet sway under him. Eyes and nose and throat burning with the threat of desperate, scared sobbing. Claws aching to sink into something. Rip and tear. Drag him out of this nightmare. Get him out. Get him out. Get him out. Just talk to me, please. I'm not upset. Promise. Just breathe. It's gonna be okay. But it's not going to be okay. He knows, he knows, he knows. And Ronbu staggers back. Hands frantically raking hair out of his face. Claws skating dangerously over skin. Maybe then it wouldn't be real if he just... Ronbu! He snaps his head up. Doesn't have anywhere else to look besides where Tubbo's standing at the front of the room. Hands held out, like he's dealing with a rabid animal. Isn't he, though? One step right over the edge, going to take him with you. Something whispers over his shoulder, and Ronbu flinches hard. Can't begin to deal with that right now. Also can't look away from Tubbo, who tracks the movement, eyes darkening like he knows. I was talking to myself. Ronbu rushes out too fast and frantic, bites his tongue hard and tries again, but he's shaking, words getting caught up and tangled as they leave his mouth. I was just talking to myself. It's nothing. Okay? Okay, Bo. Okay. Hey, Boo. Stella, it's okay. You're okay. Tubbo soothes. Takes a few hesitant steps forward, but the room seems to strobe with his movement. And another image flickers over this one. Tubbo with 3 hands out, one behind his back, and it's there, winking, shining in the dim lights. Knife, dagger, syringe. 1 hit, that's all he needs. 1 hit. Depress that plunger, take you to the floor. Ronbu scrabbles backwards, feels his back hit the wall, and it's like his heart punches up into his throat. Pulse racing, fast and dizzying. Nowhere to run, nowhere to go, can't breathe, trapped. Strap you down to a medical table, can't breathe. Gray walls, gray floors, padded, everything, straitjackets and restraints, can't breathe. Lock you away forever, can't breathe. Won't let them, not going to. You're having a panic attack. He's having a panic attack. And now that he's aware of it, Ronbu sucks in a chattering inhale, forces it to reach his lungs, touches shaking hands to his arm, his chest. No restraints. You're fine. You're just seeing things, hallucinations, fears, not real. Lets it out and moves on from there. The walls and floors are gray, but they're warm. Not cold, not harsh. He's in his room at HQ. Their room, theirs. Vibrant posters and hollow stills stacked up. Know them. Been there, seen that. See yourself smiling back, it's real. Neat bed with colorful nest of pillows and blankets. Helped you make it this morning while you hung off him. Happy name day, birthday boy. Hands in your hair, down your back, cup in your face. Amote, boo amote. Sagging over, Ronbu slides down the wall, suddenly exhausted. Knees shaky as he collapses on the floor. Heart still going too fast, but it's starting to even out. And he makes himself take deep breaths. There's a quiet shuffling sound in front of him, and Ronbu looks up, sees Tubbo sitting down as well, arms folded across his lap as he asks softly, "You okay?" Yeah, sorry, just panic attack. Ronbu stammers, thuds his head back into the wall, and relaxes for a fraction of a second before his brain catches up. Everything rushing back in, and he remembers. Fuck. That Tubbo knows. Overheard everything. Have to do damage control. Whips his head to make eye contact. Hey, look, it's not what you think, okay? Yeah. Oh, all right. Okay, can you explain then? please? Tubbo begins slowly. Never takes his eyes off Ranbu, but his hands are starting to fiddle with things. A sure sign of nerves from him. But of course he's nervous and worried. He just came back to his husband screaming at empty air like a lunatic. But that's okay. It's going to be okay. Ranbu can fix this. Knows how to fix this, has done it before. Adopts a sheepish look on his face, and keeps his voice even as he says, Yeah, sure. You ever get, into fake arguments in your head? Well, I got a little carried away. Sorry about that, But the lies die off in his throat, because Tubbo doesn't look reassured. Doesn't look like he buys it for a second. Slips his eyes closed instead, bows his head, and blows out a frustrated puff of air. And the anxiety starts to tick back up, hissing and whining like the beginnings of storm wind as Ranbu shakily demands, What? Tubbo doesn't respond. Eyes flicking back open to stare at the floor, and that's bad. That's really bad. Always looked at you before. How much longer? Pity in his eyes, poor nutso partner. Panic driving Ranbu's voice up into something sharp and angry as he snaps, What? What, Tubbo? What's your Please don't lie to me. It's so quiet, but it slams into Ranbu like what he imagines a high-altitude fall would feel like. And it's never been more apparent than when Tubbo tips his head up, grim set to his face. He knows. He knows. It's over. It's done. This is the end. Nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. He knows. But even then, Ranbu can't help hanging on. Can't stop himself blurting out, I'm not. Saying something like that in the past would have set Tubbo off faster than anything. Lit match into slick puddle of fuel, up he goes in flames. But now it just makes his shoulders hunch, like he's carrying the weight of the world. 2 hands clasped behind the back of his neck while he stares at Ranbu with tears in his eyes. Yes, you are. I know you are. Please don't lie to me, Boo. I know you. No, you don't. You're an idiot. Don't know me. Don't know anything. Is on the tip of his tongue. Angry and reflexive. But Ranbu clamps his teeth down until the sharp, metallic tang of blood fills his mouth. Refuses to ever speak something like that aloud again. He doesn't know what to say. How to get out of this one. And the silence stretches and grows in between them. Big, billowing clouds of dark sand on the horizon. Screaming winds tearing past. The atmosphere in their room shifts into something stifling. And it's so horrible to feel in a place that's always been comforting and safe, like a betrayal of the highest degree. And swallowing harshly, Tubbo looks like he braces himself for an attack, lower set of hands tangling up together in his lap. It's okay if you don't want to talk about it right now, but I know, okay? I know you hear things. For a second, everything around Ranbu winks out of existence. No. Panic, terror, skeletons laughing at you from gutters. Idiot, moron, psychopath, mounting anxiety, sand hurtling past, tearing into everything he knows. He knows. How? Wake up, not real. Wake up, not real. Wake. You're wrong. I don't. Ranbu defends too fast and spasming, tongue sticking to everything in his mouth as he tries to force evenness into his voice, and feels his heart twist when Tubbo bows his head, tense line to his shoulders, frantically keeps going. You're wrong. I'm sorry, but you're wrong. I don't, Ranbu. It's okay, just calm down, breathe. I'm not attacking you. I'm just saying I've noticed some things and... You don't know anything! Ranbu shrieks in panic, and there's sand in his eyes and his mouth, wind howling in his ears. Can't, never can, drown out the wild laughter of every horrible thing in his head. Syringe in the set of hands you can't see. One hits all he needs, take you to the floor, take you away. Tosses his head as he yells, You don't know what you're talking about. It's not like that. I don't, you're wrong. I don't. Tubbo sits bolt upright, jumping, crackling, bright snarl of fire in his eyes, and it kills the words tumbling out of Rambu's mouth as he snaps. Yes, you do. Do you think I'm stupid or something? I've seen the way you act. You're always looking over your shoulder or flicking your ears like someone's whispering to you. It feels like a blustering cloud of sand washes over him, freezing rough-edged little particles dragging and digging at his skin. Fizzing static rolling over his mind. No. He knows. He really actually knows. Can't do this. Livid fire in his eyes. Fists swinging at you. He hates you. You love him. Curls claws into his arms and wants to get away. Can't. Nowhere to go. Backed up into the mirror. Blood on his palms. No one ever wanted you. I'm not an idiot, Ranbu. Fuck me. Fuck. Hey, Boo, Stella, love, I'm sorry. Shit. Tubbo's voice drops off sharply. Violent exhale like the roaring snap of a fire that doesn't want to be put out. Forced gentleness next time he speaks, but there's still embers swirling out on each word. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have raised my voice. I love you, okay? And I'm not mad or disappointed or anything, okay? Fuck, I'm so sorry. Stella, would you look at me, love? Please? Ranbu can't tip his head up, terrified he's going to see color high on Tubbo's cheeks. Furious way his brows are snarled together, livid line of his mouth bared in anger, and he huddles into himself further. Can't stop remembering being back there, sitting small and alone, while a person he cares for, loves more than anything, his one, his only, stands over him and screams that he's never been anything. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Tubbo begs, and he's on the verge of tears. Ranbu can hear it in his voice, the way it pitches and warbles. Something he's gotten very accustomed to because he's usually the source of it. And he grinds his teeth together in an attempt to keep his claws out of his arms. Emotions are, it's so much all the time for me, and it's not an excuse, but I'm really trying to be better, but He cuts himself off with an inarticulate noise of anger, and even just that makes Rambu's skin crawl. Has cold claws of anxiety trail up and down his spine. Tubbo is a very passionate person. He loves very strongly, hates very strongly, and he knows how much Ranbu dislikes it when he raises his voice, when he shouts and snarls and loses his head, and yet he still does it anyway. I don't like when you scream at me. Ranbu mumbles into his kneecaps, arms tightening around himself when Tubbo exhales harshly. Can see in his mind the way he rolls his head tensely. I know, and I'm so sorry, really, Boo, but I wasn't yelling at you. Does it even matter? What's the difference? You still did it. Still know how much I hate it. And Ranbu clams up again, presses his nose into the crook of his knees, and feels something warm start to creep up the back of his throat as Tubbo keeps talking. I care about you so much, and I want to help you, but you won't let me. And we're partners, and I thought that you'd trust me, and when you don't, I get so frustrated. He's frustrated? No, Ranbu's frustrated. He's the one that's stuck in his cracked, broken head, not Tubbo. He's the one that has to deal with all this shit. He's the one that feels like he's been pressed under a microscope. The topic of conversation, the source of gossip. And Ranbu's opened up, shared things, but it's never enough. They keep wanting more from him, and he doesn't want to give it. Like I said, though, it's not an excuse. I'm sorry, and I'm not judging you at all, okay? Okay, Stella? I don't know what you want me to say, because I have noticed, Boo. But it's not a bad thing that I have. Tubbo rushes out. And that's always how it is, isn't it? Rambu's only doing the right thing when he's letting people peel back the layers and stare down into his winding maze. But maybe there's just some things he wants to keep to himself. It's good, actually. It means I can help you be better. He doesn't need help. He's fine. He's got this under control. It's no one's fucking business anyway. But that's all it's been lately. Everyone's business. Everyone knowing all the time what's going on with him. And his fingers tighten over his arms. And talking about that kind of stuff is good. It's part of the process, and I'm never gonna judge you, okay? Aren't you, though? Walked back in here and assumed things without me saying a word to you. And a couple things drop into place in Rambu's mind. Tubbo always on the verge of looking like he's going to say something, but biting it back. She didn't tell me anything, but do you need to? A question he doesn't need an answer for because he thinks he knows it already, has decided for himself. I want to help you, but I can't if you don't talk about it. Fuck, and he sounds so earnest. Little do-gooder off to save the world. Thinks he can fix you like he fixes his ship? Swap out the busted, broken parts and replace it with something newer, better. And Rambu feels magma bubbling up his throat. Swears steam has to escape out of his mouth as he hisses. I don't want to talk about it. Okay, that's fine. We don't have to talk about it now. I don't ever want to talk about it. It's none of your business. Rambu drags his head up, molten metals oozing out of his chest, coating everything in a tidal wave of blistering, heavy anger. I don't know why you think it is. I don't know why you think I need to talk about everything. Tubbo's face is struggling to maintain its composure, fighting valiantly at remaining neutral, but it's slipping, cracking in places, and flames wheeze out with it. I just think it's good for you, okay? You can't keep bottling everything up. Oh, so now you make decisions for me? Do I not get a say in my life anymore? Rambu seethes, lips rolling back to bare his fangs, and it drips down out of his ribs, smolders through his sternum, the resentment and the frustrations, the embarrassment, everyone looking at him all the time like he's one step off the deep end. And he's not insane, he's not crazy, he's not something to feel sorry for. Dark eyes filled with concern, narrow in reproach. Stop looking at me like that. I'm not something to pity, I'm not. And Rambu draws himself up to his full height. Has always hated feeling weak. Has always hated feeling small. Muscles tensing like they're ready for a fight. Why do you think you can decide what's best for me? Like I can't make my own choices? Like I'm too insane to think for myself? What the fuck? No, I never said that! Oh, but he's thinking it. Rambu can tell. Who are you talking to? I know you hear voices. Lot of mentally demanding things, not sure it's a good idea. Plays back over and over again, underscoring memories of Tubbo staring at him strange. Weird look in his eyes Rambu hadn't wanted to name, but he knows it now. Sees it now. Pity. Pity, 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 pity. He feels bad for you. Feels sorry for you. Looks down on you. Thinks less of you. Not a person. Not capable. A charity case. And there's liquid earth scorching in Rambu's mouth, creeping through his veins like a slow, inevitable end. You don't have to say it, I can tell. You think there's something wrong with me, that I'm crazy, that I'm insane, need to be locked up or medicated? No! Stop it! That's not true! Stop putting fucking words in my mouth, But he's lying. He's a liar. And Rambu flicks his ears back, and there's lava rolling off his tongue as he snarls. You feel bad for me, don't you? Pity me. The poor little insane prince. Doesn't have anyone or anywhere to go. Is that why you asked me to be your partner? Is that all this has been? Am I just a fucking charity case to— Shut up! Tubbo screams, embers flashing in his eyes. Jerks like he's going to come flying forwards, but stops dead in his tracks. Claps to, shaking hands on his face, and holds himself agonizingly still. No! 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 We're not doing this! I know I shouldn't yell, I know I shouldn't be mad, but fuck! I'm trying so queen's damned hard. And it's not helping that you're trying to bait me. I am not. Oh, shut the fuck up, Ranbu, you so are. Tubbo growls from behind his hands. And just the tone of his voice stuns Ranbu into silence. Because he's heard Tubbo scream and rail and carry on, but he's never heard him like this. Resigned, desolate, furious, exhausted. Like the energy it's taking to feel these things isn't worth it. This is different. It's a bitter kind of anger. The one of dark and lonely nights. Freezing empty spaces beside you. Gaps between your fingers. And silences that stretch out long and unforgiving. And Ranbu swallows hard. Queasy feeling, roiling in his stomach as Tubbo finally drops his hands. You don't want to talk about it? Fine. We're not talking about it, but don't you ever try to bait me like that again. Tubbo's eyes are completely dead. There's nothing in them at all as he gets to his feet, shaking in his hands as they touch at his wrists, looking for gold bands, nervous tick, brink of a panic attack. I shouldn't have pried. I shouldn't have yelled, but you shouldn't have tried to provoke me. I thought I meant more to you than that. Tubbo woodenly moves across to the other side of the room, starts rifling around through drawers at the edge of Ranbu's vision. But Ranbu doesn't turn to see what he's doing. Stares straight ahead, and feels molten rock weld his mouth shut. 1,000 things all clamor in his mind. Indistinct chatter from skeletons barely audible past the wailing wind. And Ranbu hunches over, presses trembling fingers into his temples, and doesn't understand what just happened. It's like someone's handed him a dozen parts that are supposed to fit together, but they forgot the instructions. And he's left to juggle them all while trying to solve this puzzle. Pieces don't fit together right. Nothing makes sense. And Ranbu's getting frustrated trying to figure it out. Himself out. He attempts to start at the beginning, but it's all jumbled. A nasty snarl of emotions Ranbu isn't sure he can untangle. Sits there and doesn't really understand why he got so angry in the first place. Frustrations and paranoia have been eating away at him for a while. The enormous mental strain it's taken to admit all of the things he has weighing on Ranbu so heavily. He's surprised he hasn't buckled yet under the pressure. Well, maybe he has. Maybe that's what this was. But what was the point of riling Tubbo up? Was he doing it on purpose? He didn't think he was. He was just scared. That's not an excuse. It can't be an excuse. And fuck, ancients, why is he like this? Why can't he ever have a normal response to something? Why does he keep hurting his loved ones? And claws prick at his arms. Need to apologize. Have to apologize. Thought I meant more to you. Knife through the heart. Your Cariad. Your husband. Your friend. Your partner. Can't do this to him. I'm sorry. Ranbu croaks into the deafening silence of their room. Doesn't receive a reply. And it feels like there's a hand wrapping around his throat. Has Ranbu snapping his head up to where Tubbo's standing by the unused bunk. Tubbo? I'm sorry, okay? I really can't talk to you right now. Tubbo says without looking up from his handheld. Upper set of hands fiddling around with it, while his lower ones are busy untangling a black wire. Ranbu realizing after a second that it's a pair of earbuds. He can't stop the scared noises that tumbles out of his mouth at the implication of that. Doesn't want to hear you. Gonna block you out, shut you away, fists banging on your door. Somebody, anybody, I'm here, pay attention. And Tubbo finally looks over his shoulder. His expression is still bleak, haggard and upset, brows drawn down low, and while his eyes do soften, it's not in a way that calms Ranbu's jumping pulse. I love you, okay? And I do forgive you. I just can't right now. I'm afraid of what I'm going to say. Tubbo sighs, hands stilling in their fidgeting once the cord is untangled, plugging the earbuds into his handheld with well-practiced ease. I'll talk to you in the morning, okay? And with that, he slips the earbuds in and climbs into the unused bunk. No, his old bunk. Did you forget? Did you forget how things used to be? Rolls over so his back is to Ranbu, and must hit play because tinny, muffled music starts to filter out, quickly becomes nothing but crackling static in Rambu's ears. Ancients. Why is every day like this? Why does Rambu always ruin every good thing he's ever had? Things had been going so well. And then he had to lose every semblance of rational thought and try to pick a fight with Tubbo, the person who just went out of his way to throw Rambu a wonderful party, bought him the most beautiful gift, was going to snuggle with him and watch a movie. Creakily, turning his head, Rambu's eyes trace hesitantly over the line of Tubbo's back, sharp jut of shoulders and smooth slope of his wings. Wants nothing more than to crawl in behind him and hold him close, make sure he knows he matters more to Rambu than anyone else. But frantic pain flares out of his chest when he realizes he's not allowed that right now. And that's completely fine. Tubbo doesn't owe him anything. Everything Rambu's been given is an enormous privilege anyway. And he forces himself to look away from Tubbo, knows he wants to be as alone as he can in their little shared dorm. Maybe I should just go find somewhere else to sleep, slip away in the night. But that idea gets shot down pretty fast. Rambu doesn't want to inconvenience anyone else, and he really doesn't want to be out in public right now. So he stays put, stares unseeing at the wall across from him, and tries to forget who he is. Maybe play pretend that he's someone else, someone who's good and kind and doesn't hurt their loved one. But none of that's true. Nothing sticks, slips out of focus as quick and softly as sand off the parapets. Rambu doesn't know how long he sits contorted into a pretzel on the floor, but it's long enough that his tailbone starts to protest, and he thinks Tubbo's fallen asleep. He's been absent-mindedly counting the pattern to his breathing until he realizes that might be a little weird and forces his mind to stop. Gets up from the floor in a series of cracking joints, and with nowhere else to go, stumbles over to his bunk, his again. How sad. How sad a thing to go from ours and we to mine and me. It's a small bed. Rambu barely fits on it lengthwise, but it's never felt larger and more empty than when he pulls the blankets up, tucks pillows around himself in an effort to mimic the way he and Tubbo usually sleep all tangled together. The sheets smell like them, myrrh oil and countryside wildflowers, and Rambu buries his face in Tubbo's pillow, knows he's not going to be sleeping tonight. His bones ache, his skin shivers, his mind won't settle. Keeps showing him the argument, fight, whatever it was, again and again, making him relive every agonizing moment of it. And only now can he see Tubbo was right. Rambu was trying to lead him into a fight. Maybe not consciously, but that horrible, nasty part of him knew all the way down at its core that an angry Tubbo was an unfocused Tubbo, and anything he could do to get the attention off him, he'd do it. It wasn't just the terrified need to distract him, though. It was also fueled by the slithering insecurities that find Rambu at his lowest, most frantic points, wormed their way into his mind until it was all he could think of. Determined to prove they were right, kept baiting Tubbo in the hopes he'd finally cave, finally give Rambu the answers he didn't want, but knew he deserved. Yes, I think you're crazy. Yes, I think you need to be institutionalized. Need medication? Need something, anything. No, you can't think for yourself. Judgment's too impaired. No, I never actually liked you or wanted you. Just feel bad for you. And it makes his shoulders shake. Doesn't bother muffling his sobs since Tubbo has earbuds in. Rambu knows he's paranoid. He knows that he has problems. He's crazy, not an idiot. But fuck, it really is a whole different matter having other people know. Having Tubbo know. I know, Boo. I know you hear things. And isn't that a punch to the gut? Because Rambu never was given the choice to tell him. Never wanted to, but that's beside the point. It feels like he didn't have any control over the situation. Honestly, doesn't feel like he has much control over anything in his life. And what little agency Rambu actually has, he hangs on to so desperately. Hates feeling like something was coerced out of him, even though it wasn't. And that's what it felt like. having Tubbo come back in here and try and press the matter. And Rambu knows somewhere in the twisting nightmare of his mind that Tubbo means well. But doesn't he understand how difficult all of this has been? Rambu's been trying so hard to be better. And it's not just the attitude or psychological manipulation. It's in being more open and honest. And it scares him. Ancients, it scares him so bad. At no point in his life has it been a good thing to be vulnerable. At least up until now. But he's still a little iffy on that even. Everything hurts so much all the time. Talking about things hurts. Not talking hurts. Being open hurts. Being honest hurts. Being vulnerable hurts. But not doing any of that hurts worst of all. And Rambu is just so tired of everything. He's always known he's not good enough for Tubbo, but he liked to pretend he was. Felt like maybe he got there a little these last few weeks. But Tubbo knowing about the specters and the skeletons ruins all of that. His throat constricts harshly around a ragged cry, remembering how people in the palace used to look at him after Resha tried to get him institutionalized. The scorn and the pity and disgust. Curls his claws straight through the blankets and sheets as his mind swaps Tubbo into their places. Something wrong with you and everyone can see it. It's in that eye. They said he hears voices, claws at the walls. What's wrong with you? A score of Tubbos turn to tell him. Sneer pulling his lips back as Rambu huddles further into himself, trying to curl up as small as possible, maybe press himself out of existence, bows his head and cries until his chest throbs. Everything hurts. And it's being a child again on Anwil. Body aching from an absence of touch, but it's amplified now. Mind dragging out all the memories from when Rambu had it. Hands on his back and in his hair, scratching around his horns. So good, so nice to be held, to be touched, to be loved. And he whimpers, unlatches his hands, and tries to comb through his hair himself. It's not the same. It's never been the same. Wasn't the same after Mother died and does nothing now. Fingers going rigid as they rake back through his hair, getting snarled up and tangled in inky strands. Rambu buries his face in his forearms, lips curling back as he cries and hates how upset he is. Keeps trying to force himself quiet, but the sobbing hiccups won't stop. He wants Tubbo. Wants him, needs him so badly. But Tubbo wanted to be alone. Didn't want to deal with this right now, and that's fair. Rambu's not begrudging him that. It's just, he's so much of Rambu's comfort. What feels like the only safe place of refuge in the deadly, dark sandstorm that swallows his mind. But he has to be left alone, and Rambu will never deny him what he wants, even if it feels like his sternum is cracking in two. The bed dips at his back then, and for a second, Rambu thinks it's all in his head. But he knows he can never recreate the feeling of that heat bleeding back through him. Can never get the cadence of that voice right. Oh, Boo. Oh, amor, I'm so sorry. Vicui, amor, vicui. Hands smooth down over his arms, card through his hair, brush against his own tangled, messily and dark locks, and a sob bursts out of Rambu's chest, clicking, catching roughly over stuttering exhales that only get worse and more erratic as Tubbo settles behind him. Rambu bites his lip in an attempt to keep it down, but then a set of arms are snaking around his waist, dragging him closer, and he lets it go with a pathetic keen. Tesoro, cordel mi arrepiento se amor. I'm sorry. Queens, me dispiace. Don't cry, Starlight. Sorry, so sorry for leaving you. Tubbo mumbles into the back of his neck, so impossibly tender and caring. And Rambu shakes his head frantically, tries to worm away even though it kills him. No, I'm sorry. Did I, was I making too much noise? Sorry, so sorry. Don't cry, Melly. Don't cry. I'm right here, Stelladore. Shouldn't have left you, I'm sorry. Tubbo hushes, and it's too much. All the things he's whispering low and sweet in Apian. Darling, honey, love, starlight. Rambu can't take it. Cries needy and desperate, like a lost child. Little lonely forgotten thing. Hiccups as arms squeeze him tight. I'm sorry. Sorry for being mean to you. Sorry for hurting you. Rambu chokes out, sniffs hard and hates, loves, needs the way Tubbo holds him. Never wants Tubbo to leave. Knows he probably should. That you don't deserve it. Wishes for once in his void, cursed life that things would make sense in his head. I'm so horrible to you. Sorry, Bo. Sorry, Helen. Sorry, I'm sorry. You're not horrible, Melly. No, you're sorry, Boo. No, okay. Tubbo says against the back of his neck. Deep, heavy sigh that ruffles Ranbu's hair. Tip of a nose pressed into his hairline. I said I forgive you, and I do. So don't cry, Amor. It's okay. You're okay. But no matter how many times Tubbo murmurs it, whispers sweet words into the space between them, Rambu can't get his breathing under control. Shakes and hiccups and rattles with sobs he does attempt to muffle now. Pathetically leans into Tubbo's touch like he knows he shouldn't. Wanted to be alone, and you drug him over here with your pity party. Manipulative, coercive snake. What a monster I raised. And Rambu sees a flickering of stern green eyes, clamps his own shut, and forces his breathing even. Not now. Not now. If you ever cared for me, not now. Murmurs ragged, and without much thought. Why do you love me? Why do you love me? Tubbo mumbles back, sounding like he's half asleep as it is. But a hand wiggles up to rest over where Ranbu's heart beats, the warmth of that palm making his pulse pick up sharply. No, I'm not easy to love. I have a temper. I'm a bitch. Clingy, needy, overly sensitive. You are none of those things. Nothing in life is easier than loving you. Rambu stresses, brings a hand up to thread shaking fingers through the one Tubbo has splayed out over his heart. Can feel it beating erratically under his fingertips. I know I don't make your life easy, and I'm so sorry. I'm such a mess. Tubbo blows out a big gust of air, squeezes their fingers together as he shuffles closer, tangles their legs up, and breathes exhausted on the edge of sleep. Rambu, so am I. He falls asleep before Rambu can come up with anything to say, fingers slackening, and slowly, carefully, Rambu detangles their hands, lets Tubbo's fall gently to rest against the mattress. What are we going to do with each other? He thinks, blinking bleary eyes open to stare at a blank expanse of gray wall, sweltering heat at his back. I keep hurting you, and you keep hurting me. Are we ever going to get past it? Will there ever be a time it's not like this? And sleep doesn't find Ranbu that night. Only thing that comes to him, restless thoughts, and the fear that everything has to end. Wonders, fatalistically and intrusive, how long forever actually is. If I love you no matter what covers hearing voices and violent outbursts. Can't sleep because his mind won't let him, because he doesn't know the answer. Lesson 41. Duty comes before attachments. Is that why he never looks at you? Hi, Mama. How are you? I hope you're doing well. I'm good. I played hide and seek with Tay and Et yesterday, but I don't really think they know how to play because they took a really, really long time to find me. Rambu laughs a little, fidgeting side to side where he sits crisscrossed in front of Mama's stone, massive drift of flowers making his nose itch. He rubs at it quickly and impulsively, flinches expecting a sharp crack or reprimand to follow. But he's alone out here in the memory garden, Nothing but the quiet clinking of hollowed stone chimes echoing mournfully in the early morning light. Smoothing hands down his arms, Rambu takes a small sip of air and ignores the slight shake in his hands, looks for something else to talk about, and bounces up and down a little when he thinks of something. "I'm supposed to start instructional soon," he says excited, and for a minute gets swept up in the elated prospect of learning new things, is so ready to hear more about the galaxy spread out above him. But then he remembers what Maliri said in their last lesson, and his ears drop. "But governess says I won't be allowed if I can't read my lesson books, okay?" A soft breeze flutters the shorter parts of his hair. Chimes clink and rattle in the background, and tapping his fingers together and apart, Rambu bows his head, admitting shamefully to his lap, "I'm having trouble reading again, Mama. I know how hard you worked to help, but I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm really trying. It's just not working." The only answer he gets is the gentle and eerie sounds of the chimes ringing into one another. Twists his fingers together until they hurt a little, and sniffles harshly, desperately wanting to feel a hand comb through his hair right now. "I miss you," Rambu whispers, like he's whispered every day for the last few months. Keeps his head bowed so he doesn't have to see the looming stone in front of him. It's not the same without you, Mama. Everyone is so busy, and I... Stop stuttering. It is unbecoming of someone with your bloodline. The memory of Maliri barks at him, and even though it's just in his head, Rambu still flinches, curling in on himself, claws digging into his skin as his shoulders shake. "Sorry, I just miss you so much, and I know you couldn't stay, but Mama, why? Why did you leave me?" His voice breaks off harshly in a loud wail, and Rambu folds into himself, presses his forehead into his knees and sobs, back heaving with the force of his cries. Everything hurts. Everything's hurt for so long, and his tail curls around his legs, arms overtop it, every limb hanging on to him for dear life like he's lost in the violent tides of the sand seas. Rambu doesn't have a name for it, doesn't understand it, but there's this dark, sucking, gaping hole in his chest, and it keeps threatening to drag him in, grays out the world around him in blurry static, and he's scared. He's so scared of falling in and never getting back out. Breath stuttering wild and out of control, he tries to actually get air into his lungs, but it never seems like it reaches. Leaves him lightheaded and a little dizzy, makes it so Rambu misses the shoes crunching on gravel behind him. He jolts at the light touch on his head, though, snaps his gaze up and blinks stupidly for a second, scrambling to his feet as soon as he can and cuts a horribly sloppy bow, words falling out of his mouth in a jumbled mess. Father, hello, greetings, honored Father, What are you doing out here? It's barely daybreak, Father says, and Rambu winces as he straightens back up, twists his feet closer together and answers hesitantly. I couldn't sleep. That's not an excuse. You shouldn't be wandering the grounds unsupervised. Father's voice is always even and level, no matter if he's upset or not. But Rambu can see the disappointment in his eyes, jerks his own down, and feels that pit reeling him in slowly. Yes, sir. He hushes to the ground, incessant tugging under his ribs, crackling static at the edges of his vision, and Rambu's throat bobs as he swallows roughly. Can't get rid of the feeling he's got something stuck down there. It's dreadfully quiet while he waits to be dismissed, for Father to sigh and wave his hand, deep voice intoning, back to your chambers immediately. So Rambu is more than a little surprised when he hears gravel crunching and sees a dark shape kneeling down in front of him. Peeking up cautiously, Rambu blinks and lifts his head the rest of the way, stares back at Father looking at him. His eyes are darting all around Ranbu's face, like he's looking for something. Bright, livid green of them, a stark contrast to the dark circles underneath. And hesitantly, Ranbu smiles at him a little. Father doesn't smile back, which isn't unusual. Ranbu's not sure he's ever seen him smile. But he brings a hand up, Ranbu hardly daring to breathe, as fingers touch at his cheek. "Have you been sleeping at all?" Father murmurs softly, thumb touching lightly right under one of Ranbu's eyes. And Ranbu really doesn't know what to say. He knows he's not supposed to lie to Father, but he also doesn't want to disappoint him by telling him that, no, he hasn't been. Not really. And he stands there in indecision long enough it might as well be an answer. But instead of any scolding reprimand, Father only sighs, tips his hand and cups Ranbu's face gently, claws carding through the hair at the back of his head. Ranbu leans back into his touch so hard he almost falls backwards. But then there's another larger palm wrapping around his shoulder to keep him upright, and he sobs at the feeling. "Hush, little one. You can't cry. Not now, not ever. You're a prince." Father chides, hand on his shoulder squeezing to punctuate the statement, fingers still dragging slowly through Ranbu's hair, the most he's ever touched Ranbu for as far back as he can remember. Nodding his head jerkily, Ranbu tries to calm down, but it's like something's sprung a leak and he can't stop it. Heavy, exhausted things race through his skin and prickle up his spine, settle horrible around his heart, only has him crying harder. He's nudged forward gently, but the unexpectedness of it makes Ranbu trip, and he practically falls into Father's chest, is going to stumble back immediately, but arms go around him to pull him closer. There's some shuffling and rearranging of limbs, but Ranbu finds himself curled up in Father's lap, head nestled in the crook of his arm, cheek resting against his chest. The unfamiliarity of the gesture enough to stun the sobs into silence. Looking up at him slowly, Ranbu tries to keep as still as possible, afraid he'll ruin the moment, this precious connection, with one wrong move. Father doesn't have his crown on, doesn't really have anything to show his station, and it's unsettling. Makes Ranbu feel like he's intruding, because like this, Father doesn't look like a king, he looks tired. Dark smudges under his eyes that Ranbu's started noticing under his own. Something about that realization gives Ranbu enough courage to dare raise a hand, settles his trembling palm on Father's face, slides it up, and pats carefully under one of his eyes. "You need sleep too," Ranbu whispers, and then quickly drops his hand, curls both of them up together over his chest. And it's not really a smile, could never be called that. Little more than a twitch of the lips as Father sighs. "There's no rest for men like me, Ran." "Men like you?" Ranbu questions, but Father shakes his head, breaks eye contact to look up at Mama's stone, and it's only when he speaks next that Ranbu realizes something's gone out of his voice. "Sleep if you can. I'll be here for a little while longer yet." "Okay," Ranbu mumbles petulantly, really wanting an answer to his question, but he settles out of obligation. Doesn't think he's actually going to sleep until a hand comes up and starts carding through his hair, and he sags back bonelessly. It's been so long since he's been touched like this. Ranbu can't stop the way trills and purrs and affectionate noises clatter and catch in his chest. Rubs his cheek into Father's side, and just barely, faintly, he can hear the quietest whisper of the deepest rumbling, like the low bass thrum of ship engines kicking on. And it lulls him off to sleep, sends Ranbu drifting down through layers of tingly warm sand. And it must be his imagination. Trick of the ears right before he succumbs. But the rumbling starts to trip and snag weird. Almost sounds like crying. Squinting through the binoculars, Ranbu fidgets around with their settings, brings the penthouse into clearer view, slowly sweeps them back and forth, and tries to figure out a good point of entry. Alarm system is a Ventron complete coverage plan, meaning doors and windows are all bugged. Less than ideal. Breaking in, last resort. Rambu nibbles on his lower lip, flicks a few more settings, and eyes the sleek, refined lines of the building. Upscale place. Could pose as repairmen to gain entrance. They likely wouldn't notice we're not the regular team. Run the risk of being asked for ID. Maybe need forged copies? Fucking of course, just one more thing. He lowers the binoculars for a second, and rubs fingers into his aching temples. Really, really wants this mission to be over already. Things just keep coming up, and it's gone on days longer than either one of them was expecting as they tried to track down an obscure auction house item, ping-ponging between upscale condos and swanky penthouses looking for the stupid thing. Whatever it is, some hideous carved statue or something, is apparently a very hot commodity with the elite. Has changed hands about 15 times in the last month alone on the black market. And while it is butt-ass ugly, it has extreme cultural significance to an ethnic group in the local system. That's really the whole reason they're here. The pay is ass, and even before this nonsense began, Rambu thought it sounded boring and tedious. But one look at the hard set to Tubbo's face, and he knew they were taking it. He's too noble for his own damn good. Rambu thinks with a glower, sets the binoculars to the side for a second, and folds his arms on the edge of the building. Can see Tubbo out of the corner of his eye, slouched against the low wall, messing with his handheld. He was supposed to be looking for building schematics, but that's clearly the chat log open on his screen. And Rambu rolls his eyes with a huff. Figures if Tubbo can take a break to text Tommy, he can get a few minutes to not think. In the dark of the night, Izia glows like a beacon. Narrow, winding streets congested with 1,000 neon signs, and shops that spill out into the road. Rough cacophony of voices and motors revving that drifts up even to where they're staked out. Rambu mindlessly watches the sluggish crowd move. People pushing past one another in something like a drunken stumble. And his mind whites out with static as he drifts for a second. He hasn't been sleeping much recently, and his body's not appreciating the sharp jerk back into insomnia. Plagues him with migraines and wandering thoughts as he struggles to readjust to being sleep-deprived. Izia's climate is on the warmer end, too, and even in only a t-shirt, bomber slung around his waist, Rambu's encroaching on uncomfortably hot. Finds himself nodding off a bit. He's in that weird place of being awake, but not aware. Kinda asleep and yet not. Spinning muzzily through slow, syrupy thoughts. Struggling to keep his head upright, when an exhaust pipe a street or two over backfires, and he jerks awake sharply. The initial loud crack is followed by a gurgling mechanical drone, and Rambu's ears flick quickly at the unpleasant noise. Has always hated the sound of improperly tuned motorbikes. Lips pulling back in a sneer as it fades from earshot. A prickle races down his spine then, and even though he hasn't lived in Voidfall for a few months now, Rambu's learned that some things just won't leave him, and the deep-seated paranoia and awareness is one of them. Knows without having to see that he's being watched. Cutting his eyes to the side, Rambu just barely catches Tubbo whipping his head back down to his handheld, trying to act like he wasn't staring, and something unpleasant turns over in Rambu's chest. "What?" he asks, maybe a bit harsher than he should, straightening up as Tubbo shrugs, lower lip sticking out a little while he shakes the hair from his eyes. Says, way too nonchalant for Rambu's liking. "Huh? Nothing." "What?" Rambu demands again, eyes narrowing. Mind kicking into overdrive, trying to figure out what's going on in Tubbo's head. What that look was for. Combing back through the last few minutes obsessively. Binoculars and boredom and so tired, can't keep your head up. Drifting away. Exhaust pipe, sudden jerk, ears flicking automatically. Know you hear things. Ears flick, someone whispering to you. And it clicks into place, and his claws shriek against smooth stone. "I thought you weren't going to assume things." Rambu hisses, drawing himself up to his full height, shoulders squared, feet set like he's bracing for an attack. And Tubbo doesn't move, besides cutting his eyes up. Voice completely dead as he says, and I thought you didn't want to talk about it. And he's right. But Rambu's not in the mood to agree with him right now. Feels like he'd be proving some dumb point Tubbo's trying to make. Turns away snippily and glares out over the city. It doesn't hold as much whimsy as it did a few minutes ago, and now all the lights grate at his eyes, air miserable and stuffy to breathe. His head hurts. His eyes itch. He's tired and hot and frustrated and wants to go the fuck home. And where exactly is that? A deep voice curls, and Rambu fights the urge to claw his eyes out, hangs his head and ticks his jaw back and forth, ignoring both of the figures on his left, one real, one not. You've shunned the entire place you were born, exiled yourself to endless wandering, but where exactly do you think you're going to go? Fuck off. Go away, I can't stand you. It's not back to your headquarters. Can't face more tense nights of tossing and turning, him crawling into your bed like it's an obligation, and then out of it like it's a relief. It feels like magma drips down the back of his throat. Swears smoke should shoot from his nose with how furious he exhales. Knows that he's wrong and a bastard. That Tubbo getting out of their bed in the middle of the night is only because of this stupid bout of insomnia. It's nothing else. It isn't. It's not back to Apaday. A place you are only welcome when he invites you there. And with the way things are going, that's not lasting much longer. Father muses in a bored tone. Like he already knows the outcome. Like he holds all the cards, pulls all the strings, the unbeatable opponent. But he doesn't know shit. They're fine. They're going to be fine. Rambu's just needs to figure out a way to convince Tubbo he's exaggerated the problem without manipulating him in the process. And he's working on it, okay? But it's a tricky thing, because Tubbo has more or less full-on decided that Rambu hears voices, and he's not wrong, and that's the biggest fucking issue. If you could back off to whatever pit you crawled out of, I'd appreciate it. Rambu thinks as hard as he can. Imagines hauling Father around by his shoulders and shoving him into a dark room. Slams the door on his impassive face, and with a flick of the wrist, chains rattle over it, sealing him away. Rambu knows that's not going to do anything, really. The fucker will be back like he always is. But it's a quick patch for now. Can hopefully get him through the next few hours, maybe finally land him on a solution to this problem. You can't keep avoiding this forever. You gotta face it at some point. Tubbo mutters, irritated, like he knows. And calling this a problem might be an understatement, actually. Colossal disaster is probably more appropriate, because Tubbo can't be coaxed or cudgeled into dropping the matter. He's too smart to fall for Rambu's bullshit lies and excuses, too noble to leave this thing be, cares about Rambu too damn much to be convinced into letting it go. If he was anyone else, if he gave fractionally less of a shit, Rambu could probably spin this whole thing easily and get out of it. But he's not, and it's driving him insane. I'm not avoiding anything. I told you, I have this under control. Rambu snaps, glaring out over the city. And this is his problem. He's never told another soul, and he'd never planned on it. But it's out of his hands now, and he's furious. Tubbo scoffs, and Rambu whips to glower at him, ears pinned back close to his head as Tubbo huffs. Then what about Rocheska? The bar? Is that what you call having this under control? No. That had nothing to do with... Rambu cuts himself off with a frustrated exhale. Tail whipping behind him. Remembers blinding anger and a hand on Tubbo's shoulder. Far from the hive, aren't you? And shivers break out across his skin. Voice dipping low. Those shitheads had it coming. Rambu, you nearly killed a man with your bare hands. And your point? Rambu almost asks. Wouldn't regret it, except for the way it made Tubbo stare at him. Terrified, scared, who are you? And he can see a shadow of that now in his eyes. There's something peculiar about that look. It reminds him of the palace, of Resha sneering at him from across the table and, you should know not to mess with my things, little brother. It's worrying. It feels like points connecting. It's too many doctor's appointments, coached questions that are only really looking for one answer. waking up groggy and confused, aching spot on his arm where the syringe went in. Eyes staring after him, whispers at his back. Didn't you hear something wrong? Hears things. What do they tell him? Claw marks on the walls. Violent outbursts. Dangerous. How much longer? And his eyes go wide. Fucking ancients of the deep void below! Rambu yells. Unstable, unpredictable, written in neat block letters. Recommended institutionalization for safety reasons. Claws punching through the file. Flings both his hands out and snarls. I don't fucking hear voices telling me to hurt people. Fuck you. Why the fuck would you think that? I didn't say that. I don't know, okay? Tubbo shouts back, tossing his handheld down out of exasperation, rakes a set of hands through his hair and throws the others around. I read some stuff online and I don't know. You won't tell me anything, and look, this is hard, okay? Oh, this is hard for you? Rambu seethes, and Tubbo snaps his mouth shut with an audible click. Embarrassed flush on his face. And good. He should be embarrassed. He's acting like a tool. And the last thing Rambu wants to do is talk about any of this. But he'd rather sacrifice some pride and dignity rather than letting Tubbo continue on, thinking he has fucking cliché demon voices in his head whispering at him to murder. Okay, first off, they don't tell me to kill people. Rambu snaps. Doesn't add on the, they only tell me to kill myself. Which he figures wouldn't do well for this whole I am mentally stable campaign. Secondly, it's none of your damn business, but you keep acting like this and I'm fucking sick of it. Tubbo starts, but Rambu doesn't care what he has to say at the moment. Bulldozes over him. I don't know how many more times I can tell you this doesn't concern you. You keep sticking your nose into it, and this is the exact reason I never wanted you to find out in the first fucking place. Tubbo recoils hearing that, hands gripping tight at his biceps, something off about his voice when he murmurs, You weren't gonna tell me? Of course not! Rambu yells like it should be obvious, doesn't think anything of it. But then he sees the way Tubbo's entire expression cracks open, raw and vulnerable. He is one of the most expressive people Rambu has ever met, and it's like reading a book. Seeing the way his feelings flash across his face, and he's hurt. He's so hurt right now. Trust is very important to Tubbo, and it's understandable why he's so desperate to make sure he can trust the people in his life. Tommy, who wouldn't go with him, never explained why. Wilbur, who lied to him and used him. But Rambu started to learn he needs it to go both ways. It's not enough that he can trust Rambu. Rambu also needs to trust him. And he does. He trusts Tubbo entirely with his life, but just some things are private. There's too much openness and honesty. But Tubbo doesn't do things in half measures. He wants everything. And the thought makes Rambu dizzy. Has never shared a fraction as much as he shared with Tubbo. And the thought of saying more, going deeper, makes him want to claw his skin off. And that's not normal. It shouldn't be that way. There has to be a compromise. There has to be something he can do. A middle ground they can meet at, because Tubbo has got to learn he can't have everything. I do trust you, Rambu says in a much gentler tone. Slides down the low wall he's been leaning against, so they're more at eye level, so he's not standing over Tubbo like a drill sergeant. This has been really hard for me. Do you get that? Yes. Tubbo murmurs, dead, fingers flexing around his arms, and it's harder to read his side profile, but it's clear he's upset. Panic and worry start to ease to life in Rambu's chest because he did that. He put that there. But the thought of explaining the specters to Tubbo scares him more than anything. Scares him more than sitting in the dark, rattling cargo hold of the Raiders ship ever did. I've kept so much to myself for so long. Thinking about everything I've told you makes me want to throw up. Rambu admits with a nervous laugh. And he swallows harshly when Tubbo doesn't respond. Fingers tapping together and apart. Like I said, I do trust you. I just get scared about you knowing things about me. Does that make sense? Yes. But there's nothing in his voice, and Rambu's hands stutter, fingers winding together instead now to conceal it. Okay, yeah, I don't know. There's just some things I don't think I'll be able to talk about with you, ever. And, is that okay? Is that okay with you? Yes, Tubbo says, but his voice catches weird. Sounds like he was going to say something else, but stopped himself short. And ever one of the worst things to exist. Rambu's mind fills in that blank space with a little too much glee. Sir, yes, sir. He was going to say, yes, sir. Head bowed in salute, sir, yes, sir. With 100 others made him feel small and weak and worthless. And his mouth goes dry in a horrible wave of guilt. Rambu has the sudden urge to flee, mind tearing itself in two because he wants to, needs to, has to make Tubbo happy. And that means being open. But then the other half feels like it's jumping off the side of Voidfall, tripping erratically through thin air, can't, won't, never will utter a single word more. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know what to do! And Rambu staggers to his feet, wants to escape from this, from himself. Core already freezing over in preparation to teleport. But then he thinks about leaving Tubbo here alone and stops, all hunched over into himself. Knobby knees pulled up, arms wrapped tight. Is it a head of dark brown hair and antenna bowed? Or is it inky dark locks and horns? And he wants to move so badly, but he won't. He'll stay if Tubbo needs him to. Hey, I need a second, but I'll stay if you need. Promise, Aylwin. Rambu brings his hands together and shifts nervously on the balls of his feet. Bright crackle of energy thrumming under his chest, coordinates in mind. All he has to do is slip through reality. But he'll wait. He'll stay. Promised he'd stay. Go ahead. I need a second too. Tubbo stammers, rakes a set of hands back through his hair to clasp behind his head. And that's all the dismissal Rambu needed, the rooftop fading out around him as he wiggles his way between the folds of this dimension. He comes stumbling out in a dingy back alley at the foot of the building they were camped on, stuffs his shaking hands in his pants pockets, and slouches into the main stream of foot traffic. Rambu weaves his way around throngs of people, and there's so many lights and sounds and conversations happening his brain doesn't know what to latch onto. Drifts fuzzy and lost, and finally he breathes a sigh of relief. Thinking all the time is exhausting, but Rambu doesn't know how to get his mind to stop. Only thing that has ever worked is slightly overloading it with sensory input so it'll short out more or less. That's not normal. But then again, nothing much about him really is. And it's getting to the point where Rambu feels like he's going to have to give up on that dream of chasing normalcy. Someone bumps into him in the crowd, and that makes him jump. A voice calls out, excited, but too loud, and he flinches. Quickly steps out of the flow of traffic and slumps against the side of a storefront. Can only calm down when his back is pressed into a solid surface. Rambu watches people buzz past, grinning, smiling, laughing. Indigo flush on their powder blue faces. Looks like they don't have a care in the world as they're jostled or when someone shouts. Wonders what it's like not to be so paranoid and high-strung all the time. Maybe if he wasn't the way he is, Tubbo wouldn't be so miserable. Would feel like he had the trust and love of his partner unconditionally. But as it stands, Rambu can't provide that for him. His claws bite into his arms reflexively at the thought, and he forces himself to unwind, thuds his head back into the wall, and wishes he was anyone but himself. Promised he'd never leave, but it's only been a few months. Does he really want a lifetime of this? Rambu thinks, staring unseeing out at the crowd. And assuming they don't get themselves killed at an early age, that'd be like 70 years or something. That is more time than either one of them has been alive combined. It's over half a century. And imagine that. Half a century trapped with Ronbu as your partner. No one sane would agree to that. Void Ronbu's not sure even he'd agree to that. And he's the one stuck with himself permanently. Has only been alive 21 years, and with how exhausted he is, he's honestly not sure he's even going to survive 21 more if it's always like this. It's not like Ronbu doesn't want things to get better, and he can admit that some things have. Like he hasn't wanted to throw himself off anything in around a month now. But there's other stuff he's not sure is going to get better. The specters are his own damn fault. Ronbu wished them into being, and relied too much on them. Gave over too much of himself, and now it feels like they're as much a part of him as anything else. He hasn't heard anything that sounds like Maliri since his name day, but it seems too easy, too convenient that she's gone all of a sudden. Ronbu doesn't know if it's just wishful thinking or not, is scared to put too much hope into it, only to wind up disappointed when she slithers back out of wherever she's gone. If it was a perfect galaxy, he wouldn't have had to dream them up in the first place. And if Ronbu really had a say, he'd want them gone in a heartbeat. But the problem is, he doesn't think there really is a way to get rid of them. When Resha was trying to get him admitted, she had Ronbu drug in front of every senior medical staff the palace housed, and most of them were in her back pocket, so they never listened. But even the ones that weren't turned a deaf ear to him. Ronbu tried explaining in the beginning, just imaginary friends, nothing more. They don't tell me things I don't already know. But once it became clear no one was listening, had already made their assumptions, he backpedaled hard, trying to do damage control. They never helped. Told him to sleep more, to eat regularly, and work on making real friends. And when none of that worked, why wouldn't it? He couldn't sleep. He ate when he was supposed to. He couldn't trust anyone. They handed him small bottle after small bottle. You'll feel better. Just take it. Bored voices tell him as he's ushered away. And it's staring at the little fleet of plastic containers he's accumulated and remembering. Luridly green eyes hazed over. Drunken swing of her head, stop looking at me. Sweeps the whole mess into a trash bin without a second thought. Doctors make him nervous. Anyone observing too closely makes him nervous. Feels like a hand is cinching closed around his throat. Stinging prick of a syringe makes you pliant, drops you to the floor. And Ronbu rolls his head, trying to dislodge the feeling. His anxiety is flaring sharply thinking about all this, and he cracks each knuckle one at a time, working down the rows of his fingers, trying to find something to distract his mind with. The street in front of him is still really crowded. Izia has a popular nightlife scene, and this section of town will probably stay busy until the early hours of the morning, making it good for people watching. Ronbu mindlessly scans the crowd, ears flicking, trying to pick out words of the local language. And he's skirting the edges of a panic attack, so that has to be why he thinks he hears that laugh. The one that steals the air from his lungs and freezes his blood solid. He snaps to attention immediately. Tail gone stock still behind him, afraid to twitch even the slightest. Hands wrapped tight around it, yanking you back, yanking you down, and you yowl on impulse, swallow it back when they laugh when he... There, again. The sound that haunts his nightmares. And Ronbu tries to breathe normally, knows he's hallucinating. But every inhale rattles as he whips his head, looking frantically across the sea of people. Another image pulsates over reality in time to his stuttering heart, and it's not real. It's not, but it's drab walls and cracked concrete under his feet. Stained black, hastily wipe it up, but it smears everywhere. Freezing burn running down his face. Scorching tip of a knife at his throat. Languorously drawing shapes while he screams. Scared, songbird. And that voice laughs and laughs and laughs. Ronbu steps out into the street in a trance. Hands forcing him down, boot crashing into his horns, sick crack as one cleaves off. Slowly pushing his way through the horde of people. Walking towards the ugly, grating, hateful laughter. It's not in his head. Searing fire burning into his skin, draws lines he sees every day, threatening at his fingertips next. A group looks like they've just come stumbling out of a bar, an insignia Rambu is never, ever going to forget emblazoned on their sleeves. Prick at the crook of his elbow. Terror choking him this time instead of hands. Behave for us, Birdie. His blaster is in his hands. When did it get there, head snapping to the side as he's backhanded? Finger not hesitating on the trigger, depressing it like that syringe into your arm. Never been so scared as when you felt your mind slipping away. Last thought, no one's coming. But he's shaking, horribly. His shot goes wide. Scared songbird. Smashing through a nearby window instead. The group of raiders spin around, looking for who, what, where. And there. Crooked nose, slanted red eyes, scar through his lip. And Rambu can't forget anything. But there is no instance where he'd ever forget that face. Can't breathe. Fires again. Misses again. And screams in frustration, anger, terror. Hands around your throat, blood down your face. Sing for me. Rambu's off like a shot, shoving through the crowd like his life depends on it. And his chest is on fire. Too many things burning wild and out of control. But he has a target this time. He has a target this time, and a blaster in his hands, and sharp claws and fangs, and there's going to be a corpse at his feet if he can just get there. They have to be drunk. Go tripping back from him in confusion. A fist swings at his head, but it's sloppy. Rambu ducks, comes twisting back up and cracks his knuckles into that one's face. Hits hard enough, something crunches under the impact. Someone's screaming. Several someones. He doesn't know. It might be him. He doesn't care. Hears a blaster whine, and is gone the next second. Appears behind a figure that's trying to turn in alarm, but never makes it. Drops to the ground with a smoking crater in their face. But it's not the one he wants. It's not him, the nightmare, the demon. Sing for me. And Rambu whips around, and it's like a magnetic pull. His eyes snapping to the one as red as the seething remnants of a supernova. Concrete slicked with your blood. Head growing heavy. Can't throw off the hand petting through your hair. Good boy. Rambu lunges forwards, howling. Blood on his face. It's not his. Blaster in his hands. He has a target. Hellfire in his eyes. He sees a corpse. And the two remaining raiders turn and flee. People are everywhere. Rambu can't see. Finds a low-hanging roof, and the next thing he knows, he's vaulting over the side of it. Crashing down onto the nightmare. Feet driving into his spine harshly as he takes the two of them to the ground. They roll across asphalt, and Rambu's above him for a second, arm swinging back to aim properly. But then there's knees in his gut, and he goes flying back, scraping his palms in his haste to get his legs under him. Rambu! Someone's screaming for him, and it's getting closer, echoing above his head. But the nightmare just scrambles down a side street, and Rambu's rocketing to his feet to chase after. Not getting away. Can't run from this. From me. Right between the eyes. Sharp shot. No hesitation. Your blood under my boots. Your screams in my ears. And that's a promise. It's dark back here. Rambu can see, but he must not be able to. Trips into a few trash bins, and it's enough. It's enough. Slows him enough that Rambu can catch up. Can grab him around the shoulder. Spin him so they're facing and smash the hilt of his blaster across his face. A dark purple line splits open over his already crooked nose, violet running down his face as he grunts in pain. Hands around your throat, voice cutting out, needle in your arm, can't remember anything after what happened. What happened? And Rambu rears back with a feral shriek, punches him again, and again, and again, until his blaster is slick with purple blood, whips him across the face so hard he loses his grip, sends the bastard crashing to the ground. Kneeling on the dingy floor, face throbbing while they bind your hands, your ankles. Shakily ask if they need the comm number again. Horrible laughter, terrible laughter. Hand fisting in your hair. Oh, I think we're going to have some fun first, Birdie. The raider's propping himself up on elbows, but freezes when he sees the glowing end of a blaster pointed in his face. Spits blood out of his mouth as his eyes slowly rove up to Rambu's. Scared, songbird, scared, scared, sing for me. And it falls, furious and shaking in between them. Remember me? Turning and spitting another glob of violet blood onto the ground. Looks like a tooth goes with it this time. The man sneers around blood-stained teeth. Of course. You're that ender bitch, little whiner. Mother's never had one quite like you. You were such a screamer. Rambu's hands are shaking around the blaster. Never have before, steadiest hands, coming unraveled, scared, songbird. He's on the ground, looking up at you, so why do you feel like it's reversed? And the man grins wider, like he knows. Leans forward languorously to purr. Not that I'm complaining. You have such a lovely voice. Made the prettiest noises, just like a little songbird in his gilded cage. Gonna sing for me again? Wanna sing for me, little bird? Everything whites out. There's a sandstorm howling in his ears, blasting over the top of his head in freezing, buffeting waves. And Rambu levels his arm, screeching, seething sound of breathless, vicious retribution thundering under his skin as he pulls the trigger. Flash of bright red lights up the alley like a bomb's gone off. Brutal elation flooding through him hearing the man scream. Hands falling to clutch at his abdomen. Blood so dark and thick it looks black leaking out over his fingers. And the world spins. Your blood under his boots. His blood under your boots. Your blood under your own boots. Screams echoing long and horrible. Torn from your throat. No one's coming. No one's coming. No one's... Rambu staggers forwards, alley flickering in and out around him. Sometimes, the dark, dingy hell he can't seem to get out of. But this time, it's not him cowering in fear and bleeding. It's not him. It's not him. It's not him. This time he has the weapon. This time he's in control. Something scuffles behind him. Boots hitting the ground, trying to slow momentum. Not now, ancients. Please, not now. Breathy, panicked voice that doesn't have any business being here, shouting. Rambu? What are you... Fuck off, Tubbo! Rambu shrieks, never ever going to take his eyes off the man writhing in front of him. Thinks he might pass out from head rush seeing the way terror constricts his pupils. Addressing him, the monster, now as he screams. How does it feel? How does it fucking feel? You scared? You scared? You... Rambu, what the fuck are you... It was him. It was him. It was him. Rambu roars. Doesn't think he's making sense, but his mind is in 1,000 pieces. Split apart by thermal knives, cracked into shards like broken pieces of horn. So much pain snarling up from his chest he can't breathe. Choked off like hands around your throat. Imperializer. The raider stutters out between pants of agonized breathing. Squints his eyes closed as a spasm racks his body, red depths swirling with vicious hatred as they creak back open. Shoulda killed you, slit your throat, let you bleed out, fucking ender, fucking imperial dog, go to hell. What about my people, my planet? Do you think we deserve this? Howls in his ears. Hits him like a blow to the head, and Rambu winces. Brings his free hand up to press shaking fingers into his temples, snarling. This isn't about that. It's me. It's about me. Why? Why? Everything you did to me. Why? What did I ever do to you? You destroyed my home, you dumb fucking chill. The raider spits, blood flying out of his mouth. Lips twisting up in a sick grin. Hand fisted in your hair, forcing your limp head back. Same smile grinning down at you. Know your place, Chiokil. And I'd do it all again and laugh. Fuck you! Death to the Empire! Deserved it every bit, Birdie. And I'd happily do it again. Blood's flying everywhere, and Rambu flinches back. Loud crack of a blaster shot echoing down the alley. Stares confused at the crumpled over form of his living nightmare. Nothing much left of that sneering, horrible smile. Did I? But no, his hand is still hanging by his side. So, no, not me. Wasn't me. What? How? No. Woodenly turns to look over his shoulder. And there's Tubbo, standing with furious tears streaming down his face as he lowers his arms. The barrel of his blaster is smoking. What the... Rambu whispers hoarsely. Blinks because this isn't real. This can't be real. Goes to clear his throat and feels like there's fingers pressing into his windpipe. Voice spiking in volume as he says, What the fuck? What the fuck? Fuck you! Tubbo rears back, offended. Opens his mouth, but before he can get a single word out, Rambu is shouting. He was mine! Why? He was mine, Tubbo! Why did you shoot him? He hurt you! Tubbo stammers, voice thick with the tears that run down his cheeks, and he sniffs hard, shaking his head as he whispers wretchedly. I didn't think... He hurt you, Boo? Twisting back around in mounting horror, Rambu stares at the body in front of him and wishes its chest would rise. Wishes it would make more noise of protest, so Rambu could go over there and be the one to do it. Watch the fear fade out of his eyes along with his life, but his chest is still. He's silent. It's over. It's done. He's dead. It feels like he gets struck by lightning. A furious charge that rolls up from his feet and rattles everything. And he's so angry, hands aching with the need to tear into something. Rears his arm back before he can make a mistake he regrets and hurls his blaster down the alley. A splintering crack echoes back as it presumably breaks into a dozen pieces, and Rambu fists both his hands in his hair and screams, wild and unhinged. Sounds like he's on the verge of madness, but he doesn't care right now. Because that was his one chance. His only chance to get the satisfaction of taking that fucking bastard out of this galaxy, to make him hurt, like Rambu was hurt. And it was fucking taken from him, just like all of your choices are. Poor little brother. Doesn't have control over anything. Spinning, lost and confused through the endless night. Shut up, shut up, shut up! Rambu snarls like a caged animal, raking frantic, livid claws through his hair. Remembers dragging them down wooden doors in a panic, leaving gouges behind that everyone would point to later. And Resha laughs. You've never had control. Not even a say over what happens to you, and now you'll never get closure. We'll always be wondering what it would have felt like to be victorious for once. You're a failure. A disappointment. Shouldn't have teleported back. Resha, shut your whore mouth or I'll do it for you! He screams, spinning on his heel, but of course she's not there. She's not real. She's not. But Tubbo is. Stands there frozen in place, staring at Rambu like he's... And with an enraged growl, Rambu jabs a finger at him. And you! Stop fucking looking at me like that! I'm not crazy! I'm not! Fucking stop it! Tubbo's face is pale, eyes wide in alarm. I think you are. You need help. You're insane. You've lost it. You never had it. And it hits like a punch to the gut. Has Rambu screaming, I'm not crazy. I'm not! I don't need your help. I don't want to see a doctor. I don't need medication. Just stop trying to fix me. I'm fine. Everything's on horrible fire and seething through him until it's suddenly not. Because Tubbo can never keep his emotions off his face. So Rambu gets to see the exact instant his heart breaks. Tears pool and gather along his lash line, eventually overflow and run trailing down his face, brows curving sharply together as his lower lip wobbles. And the way he hunches into himself is so cracked open and raw, like a buckling piece of hull. Rambu thought there was ground under his feet, but now he's not sure there ever was. Vertigo spinning in his head as he stumbles forwards, hand pathetically outstretched, like that's going to change anything. And at the sound of his boots scuffing, Tubbo whirls around and bolts. In his desperation to get away, he accidentally rams into someone walking near the mouth of the alleyway, slows enough that if Rambu wanted to, he could catch up with him, stop him, pull him back and hold him close and whisper apologies into his hair. But he doesn't. Stays locked in place and watches Tubbo disappear like books fluttering wildly off the parapets. Slowly looks down at his shaking hands, skin too dark, Can't see the blood, but it's there. Can feel it, dried and tacky, settled under his claws, and curls them into fists. What's wrong with him? But that's not really the right question, because Ranbu knows. Everything from his past haunts him all the time, and he can never get rid of it. Hangs over his head like an executioner's blade, and it's quaking now, dangerously close to falling, and that'd be nice. Ranbu Zithatad. Laboriously raising his head, Ranbu stares dead-eyed at the figure standing at the edge of the alley. The same one Tubbo just bumped into, and figures, sure, why the fuck not? This might as well happen. Doesn't recognize the outfit they're in, but it looks sort of official, and he has just killed 2 or so people. Should I leave a note? Do I get a phone call? Will it matter? Would he even pick up? Ranbu scrubs his bloody hands across his face, back through his hair, and honestly doesn't know the answer. He hadn't been thinking earlier. Was completely lost in the monstrous well of emotions he's been trying to forget about for months now. But it hasn't gone anywhere. Has all just been rotting and festering under the surface. There's a gaping black hole where a door is supposed to be in his hallway, and it oozes a thick, tar-like substance. But Ranbu knows it's not tar. He knows what it is. Freezing burn down his face, splashing onto cracked floors. But he's been acting like if maybe he pretended hard enough, it'd erase what happened back then. Back there. Smoothing hands down the sides of his neck, he can feel the little bumpy, raised edges of burn scars, traced over his skin in mindless patterns. Remembers the first time he saw them in a mirror, how it felt like his heart was being squeezed in an iron grip. Embarrassment coloring his face dark because he was never getting rid of them. They'd be there forever. Ranbu doesn't like looking himself in the eye, but he hated in that instance meeting his own eyes and thinking, victim. He didn't want to be a victim, someone that got taken advantage of. He didn't want to be weak and small and scared. He wanted to be powerful, strong, someone that others would look at in awe and not like there was something wrong with him. He didn't want any of this to happen to him. So then why did it? Was it his fault? Was it him? And through the crushing despair, a memory slides out and settles around Ranbu's shoulders like a jolting electrical arm. Thinks he can smell something sweet in the air as a voice hushes. We don't get to choose how others treat us. This was done to you. Wasn't your fault. Ranbu Zithatad? The cop asks again in a hesitant voice, since he's been quiet for so long. And this has to be one of the most unsure law enforcers he's ever met, void below. And Ranbu jerkily nods his head. He should probably flash his syndicate ID and claim this was a mission. Shuffles forwards and fumbles for his wallet before they can slap cuffs on him. And is wholly unprepared when they hold out a slim, dark flash drive instead. There's no real identifying symbols on the drive or anything. But now that he's closer, Ranbu can see the swooping insignia on their jacket matches similar designs he's seen for interstellar couriers, not local law enforcement. He has a sinking, hazy thought as to what this is about, and only takes the damn thing because his brain defaults to basic social niceties once he's given up on being in charge of it. And since he's checked out, it's probably the only thing that stops him from immediately punching the courier as they say, "Your father insists you contact him as soon as..." Fucking... Of course. Can't catch a break. Can't get away. Why won't they leave me alone? Never cared before. Why do they now? Everything else the courier is saying lost in the blinding prickle of angry static that snaps and sparks in his head. And he wants to hit them. The person in front of him, his father, his sister, himself. Drive his fists into the stone walls around him until his skin splits open and blood coats his knuckles. Ranbu is so beyond anger he almost can't stand it. But it dawns on him, like a cold splash of water to the face, that being angry has never done anything for him. Not really. It has never, ever made him feel better. Actively makes him feel worse. And there was a brief euphoria after pulling the trigger, but was it worth it? Did it make up for the way Tubbo's lip wobbled and the tears that raced down his face? He knows what the answer is. Knows it in a heartbeat. And it feels like something splits open in his head. Like a support finally buckles, and he understands, with all-consuming dread, that he has a problem. A lot of problems. And that he can't keep going on like he has. The courier's voice filters back in slowly as he regains awareness. Unwanted awareness. Ancients. Fuck him. What is he supposed to do? And it makes his jaw tick back and forth. And if you need directions or assistance to a local call center, I can... Go fuck yourself. Rambu mutters under his breath, exhaustedly slipping his eyes closed, since reality has started to warp and dance again. And he just can't right now. Doesn't need to be seeing Salel Niad spread out before him. Parapets rising in front of him. Frantic, desperate compulsion to jump and escape everything. The flash drive emits a few distressing cracks as Rambu pierces it with his claws, thoroughly destroying whatever message it contained. And from his side, Father murmurs, "Don't you see? Don't you get it? We're the only ones that still want you. You belong with us, not out here, not with him. Come home, come back, return to your grave. I am just so fucking tired of you." Rambu whispers, ragged and broken, blinks his eyes back open, and turns to stare desperately at the wavering image of Father, face completely blank and uncaring. Doesn't know what he was expecting to see, what he's trying to find. Sucks in a quaking inhale and practically cries. Just leave me alone, please. Are you talking to me? The courier asks, and Rambu sighs. Doesn't bother looking at them. Still trying to find some shred of humanity in this ghastly thing he's made. Murmurs softly when he can't find it. No, I'm not. Do you have a short message you'd like to relay? They hedge, clearly wanting to get out of here, uncomfortable with Rambu addressing the empty air. And he almost laughs, hysterical and unhinged, because they clearly think he's crazy and have only known him for a few short minutes. So what's the point of pretending? Rambu can't hide it well enough anymore. Tubbo already knows, so he's failed in that regard. And pretending like Tubbo doesn't know has only driven a wedge between the two of them. What it boiled down to, Rambu realizes, is what's more important to him. Keeping his pride and dignity, or keeping Tubbo? And is it even really a contest? Short mess. No, you know what? Yeah, actually. Rambu begins quietly. Readjusts his hand and rams his claws all the way through the flash drive, splitting it apart into 1,000 crackling shards of plastic and electronics that he dusts out of his palm. Yeah. Can you tell my father to go throw himself off the palace for me? Excuse me? The courier asks, slack-jawed. And Rambu brushes past them. Legs a little shaky, but they'll bear his weight. Turns in the direction Tubbo ran and hopes he still has a chance. Says flippantly over his shoulder, "You heard me. And it's not Zethatad, it's underscore. My name is Rambu underscore." They hadn't talked about foregoing last names. Rambu hadn't seen a point, really. It wasn't necessary to prove they were married. And he hopes Tubbo doesn't mind that he's using his now, that he wants to keep using it. He doesn't want to be Rambu Zethatad of Anwil anymore. Rambu of cold, lonely nights and no safe harbor and swirling black sands. He wants to be Rambu underscore of the Syndicate. Someone people would crowd close and sing happy birthday for. Someone that's worthy of being married to the most incredible person in existence. Someone that deserves to take their last name as his own. Rambu wants to be worthy of that title, underscore, and everything it means. Family, love, safety, kindness, compassion. But something has to change. Has to give just a little, and he thinks it has to be him. feels something rumble in his maze of hallways, earth quaking under his feet as he pulls his handheld out and starts typing.